welcome to Resurrection Sunday, Easter 2020. Today we're going to tell a story. The setting of the story starts at a dinner table, travels to a garden, a cross of execution, and finally a graveyard. It's a story that has been told and believed for generations, a story that has changed the world. A story of a man who was stripped of everything, knocked down, and came back. The greatest comeback story of all time. His name is Jesus, and this is his story of pain, restoration, and resurrection. He rose, and so will we.
It was almost time for the Jewish Passover festival. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world, and now was the time he showed them his great love. Jesus and his disciples were at the evening meal, so while they were eating, Jesus stood up and took off his robe. He got a towel and wrapped it around his waist. Then he poured water into a bowl and began to wash the followers' feet. He dried their feet with a towel that was wrapped around his waist. Jesus said, "After a person has a bath, his whole body is clean. He needs only to wash his feet, and you are clean, but not all of you." Jesus knew who would hand him over to his enemies. That is why he said, "Not all of you are clean." When Jesus finished washing their feet, he went back to the table. He asked, "Do you understand what I did for you? I did this as an example for you, so you should serve each other just as I served you." Then he told them, "Tonight I will be delivered into the hand of sinners, and I will die. And the man who puts his hand in the cup with mine will betray me." He told them this so that when it happened, they would believe forever that he was the great I Am.
After dinner that night, Jesus went with his disciples to a place called the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And Judas, the one responsible for handing Jesus over, knew where this place was. So Judas led a group of soldiers to the garden, and they were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus already knew everything would happen to him, so he went out and asked them, "Who are you looking for?" They answered, "Jesus from Nazareth." His response moved them back, and they fell to the ground when he said, "I am." He then asked them again, "Who are you looking for?" They said, Jesus from Nazareth." Jesus said, "I told you, I am." Then the soldiers with their commanders and the Jewish guards tied up and arrested Jesus. Early the next morning, they handed him over to Pilate, the governor. Jesus stood before Pilate, the governor, who asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "I am." Then the priests made their accusations against Jesus. He said nothing. Then Pilate ordered that Jesus be taken away and whipped. The soldiers made a crown from thorny branches and put it on his head. Then they put a purple robe around him. They whipped him 39 times on his back with a whip and kept coming up to him, hitting him and saying, "Hail to the King of the Jews."
Pilate asked the people, "So what should I do with Jesus, the one called the Messiah?" All the people said, "Kill him on a cross." Pilate saw that there was nothing he could do to make the people change, so he took some water and washed his hands in front of them all. He said, "I am not guilty of this man's death. You are the ones who are doing it." The people answered, "We will take full responsibility for his death. You can blame us and even our children." And he told some Roman soldiers to beat Jesus with whips. Then he handed him over to be killed on a cross. The Roman soldiers nailed Jesus to a cross, and at noon the whole country became dark. The darkness continued for 3 hours. Then Jesus cried out loudly and died.
That evening, a man named Joseph put Jesus' body in a new tomb. Then he closed the tomb by rolling a very large stone to cover the entrance. The next day, the leading priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. They said, "Sir, we remembered that while that liar was still alive, he said, 'I will rise from death in 3 days.' So give the order for the tomb to be guarded well for 3 days." Pilate said, "Take some soldiers and go guard the tomb the best way you know." They did this by sealing the stone in the entrance and putting soldiers there to guard it. The day after the Sabbath day at dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other woman named Mary went to look at the tomb. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord came from the sky, and there was a huge earthquake. The angel went to the tomb and rolled the stone away from the entrance. Then he sat on top of the stone. The angel was shining as bright as lightning. His clothes were as white as snow. The soldiers guarding the tomb were very afraid of the angel. They shook with fear, and then became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Don't be afraid. I know you are looking for Jesus, the one who was killed on the cross. But he is not here. He has risen from death, and, as he said he would, come and see the place where his body was. And go quickly and tell his followers, Jesus has risen from death."